It's being called the greatest rock and roll show on earth, but it's not the drug and sex-laden heavy metal extravaganza you might expect. The American premiere of the Human Rights Now tour was kicked off in Philadelphia and has some of rock's biggest stars singing a different tune, one of compassion, hope, and an end to oppression. Amnesty International has brought together such acts as Bruce Springsteen, Sting, and Tracy Chapman to raise awareness about human rights.
Amnesty International is not the first organization to use rock music to spread a message.
More and more bands are sending political messages to our children through rock music. But what are they saying, and who is listening?
Channel 6 News reporter Tony Ginyard and photographer Joe Morrison have been examining rock's new conscience, and Tony tonight has the first of a three-part Channel 6 News Extra.
Ever since Elvis Presley suggestively swung his hips toward screaming girls, parents have been concerned about the music children are listening to. But rock music has come a long way from Elvis's relatively mild solicitations to Love Him Tender. The seeds for this kind of concert were planted back in the 60s, but the 1980s version of rock activism is not as confrontational or rebellious.
Oh, baby,
in the 60s, the world woke up to a new genre of music. Many of you look to Joan Baez and Bob Dylan to point out the world's problems. Now, 1988. We are once again listening to musical messages promoting human rights, denouncing social problems.
One interesting thing about that period was every band, well, most of the bands that were happening were a category to themselves. Whereas today, there's something will happen and there'll be a barrage of bands that try and get into the bandwagon.
Look past the colored lights and dramatic presentation to catch the message being belted out. Newcomer Tracy Chapman is keeping this bandwagon rolling.
I know things will get better. You'll find work and I'll get promoted. We'll move out of the shelter, buy a bigger house and live in the suburbs.
With the exception of a few bands like Midnight Oil, the Church, and like that, like these message bands, these people like with Consious and stuff, I think a lot of kids are kind of missing out on it, because it's like, as long as they can dance to it, it's good. It's sort of like a reverberation of back to the 50s. But when it comes to like the message of the music, I don't think anybody really gives a damn.
But many would rather listen to new music instead of what's being called gutless top 40 tunes.
The stuff I listen to, I mean, there's every song, there's songs about like political songs about what happened in Afghanistan, songs about drugs, people dying.
Many are now starting to accept a decades-old push to socially conscious music, and we're looking behind to see what we've missed. Maybe love is all you need, but local Amnesty International members also want justice for political prisoners. There are about 1,500 Amnesty members in Central Florida and 335,000 nationwide. They write letters and send petitions to foreign governments seeking justice. And tomorrow we'll look at some of the bands, both local and national, that are helping get the Amnesty message out. So we'll have that tomorrow, back again at 11.
I think you're right. There is a message in the music, but
you have to listen.
You really do, because it's often hard to understand the words.
That's right.
Especially for me.
Tonight in Los Angeles, California, an event is taking place that will make its way into music history books.
It's the second stop in the U.S. for the Amnesty International Human Rights Now tour.
Channel 6 News reporter Tony Ginyard joins us now with part 2 of a Channel 6 Extra, Rock's New Conscience.
One more part. All of the people involved in the Human Rights Now tour are sending us a message in their music. The bands and musicians, many have familiar names, others you may not know. But through song, they're using their popularity to tell us it's okay to fight against injustices in this world. Performances at Live Aid, Farm Aid, and Freedom Fest have proven how influential bands can be.
Good morning, children of the 80s and others. This is your Woodstock, and it's long overdue.
But where Woodstock left off, the Amnesty International Human Rights Now tour begins. Bands drawing attention to violations of the Declaration of Human Rights signed 40 years ago.
I think they're doing a great job. One of the few organizations that are monitoring some of the suffering that goes on around the world.
At the forefront, the Irish rock band U2. They sing about poverty, human rights violations, nuclear war, and racism.
Free at last. take your life. They can never take your pride.
U2 is now considered, you know, a mainstream act, you know. When they first came out in '77, it was like, you know, who is this band? And then so like they just grew like a family of locusts almost, you know, sweeping across Central Florida.
But U2 is not alone. Among the new bands raising social questions in their music, the Pogues, The Alarm, Tracy Chapman, and Midnight Oil, the Australian band addressing the plight of the Aborigines.
White man, listen to the songs we sing. White man came, took everything.
Others you've heard before are also changing with the times. Sting, Bruce Springsteen, and Peter Gabriel. They are all setting the stage for bands like the group John David Baldridge of Orlando.
So let's point our missiles toward the heart of Russia. Countdown toward the Judgment Day.
The Human Rights Now tour is taking its place besides Live Aid, Farm Aid, and Freedom Fest, but it's being called the most ambitious, performing in 5 continents in 6 weeks for the sake of political and social reform. Tomorrow night, we'll talk to the fans and find out if they understand the message in the music. And that's something, like I said last night, you have to listen closely to.
I guess you don't have to agree with the way they look or they sound, but the message is important.
Listen for it. It's there.
Okay. Thank you, Tony.
A much more peaceful demonstration is getting attention as protesters of human rights violations sing for change.
The Amnesty International Human Rights Now tour is at center stage, but the fans are being credited for making the event a success.
Channel 6 News reporter Tony Ginyard joins us for part 3 of our Channel 6 Extra, Rock's New Conscience.
You know, most of us listen to music because it has an effect on us. It relaxes you, makes you happy, or even makes you think. Fans play an important role in the music world, and the songs of the 80s are apparently inspiring many of you to stand up and speak out. The sound of progressive rock music is making its way into local night spots. You either love it or hate it. The people listening like progressive rock because to them it dares to be different.
You have these people that are listening to music and they dress the way they want to. They don't dress in the mainstream. They don't act in the mainstream. They don't listen to the mainstream. It sets them apart, and in setting them apart, it brings them closer to each other.
This is a starting point for many bands, and after graduating to the mainstream, credit is often given to their fans. Bono of U2.
I used to kind of think, you know, do they really get what it's all about? But even if they don't get what it's all about, even if they just come to the concerts because, you know, we're a good band to see live, that's okay too.
We need to get these people out of prison.
People attending concerts are becoming a force for Amnesty International. They are signing petitions calling for the release of political prisoners.
Let people out there know that we mean business.
And local fans of the group U2 have formed their own organization, Pride.
I'm not out there crusading for world peace or anything. I mean, it's everything that, I mean, it's something everybody wants, but I know as one person I can't go out there and stop the nuclear arms race or, you know, do anything like that. But everybody's got within them enough of an ability to go out and at least do something to help somewhere along the line.
The Amnesty International Human Rights Now tour will perform tomorrow in San Francisco. Then it's on to Tokyo. Millions of people around the world are being exposed to their musical message. But will it change the world? Well, only time will tell. And I have to say that the force behind this entire series is a photographer, Joe Morrison, who works here, who is really, this has been a learning experience for me, and I've learned a lot from it.
Joe's out in California now?
Yes, he's out there. From what I know of, he's out there enjoying all of this.
Doing more research, probably also.
Probably.
Yeah.